Arnold Schwarzenegger stood in the courtroom, his imposing frame filling the space as the judge looked down from the bench with obvious irritation. This wasn't just any ordinary hearing. The former governor of California was being fined for something that seemed absurd to everyone present, wearing a simple gold Christian cross around his neck. The cross, modest but clearly visible, hung over his crisp white dress shirt, catching the courtroom lights. It seemed unthinkable, fining the Terminator himself for wearing a symbol of his faith in what was supposed to be a free country where religious expression should be protected. But the judge was unwavering in his position. The courtroom had strict rules, rigorously enforced, that prohibited any display of religious symbols, regardless of who was wearing them. "Mr. Schwarzenegger," the judge said sternly, "you have violated this court's dress code by wearing that cross. We do not permit overt displays of religious symbols in this courtroom." Arnold raised an eyebrow, his Austrian accent thick with disbelief. "So you are fining me for my belief?" he asked, his voice calm but carrying that unmistakable authority that had commanded movie sets in the California Statehouse. The room went silent, everyone waiting for the judge's response. "This has nothing to do with your beliefs, Mr. Schwarzenegger," the judge replied coldly. "This is about maintaining the neutrality of this courtroom. You are fined $15,000 for violating our regulations." The fine meant nothing to Arnold, a man who had built fortunes in bodybuilding, Hollywood, and politics could pay it without thinking twice. But that wasn't what this was about. The issue wasn't the money, it was the principle. Arnold wasn't someone who backed down from a fight, especially when it involved matters of personal freedom and constitutional rights. Instead of simply accepting the fine, Arnold did something no one anticipated. "I will pay your fine," Arnold said slowly, his voice measured. "But first, I have a question for you." The judge, clearly annoyed by Arnold's boldness, sighed. "What is it?" Arnold flashed that famous confident smile that had carried him through decades of success. "Isn't this court bound by the Constitution of the United States?" The courtroom fell dead silent. Everyone could sense where this was heading, but no one dared to speak. The judge, caught off guard, hesitated before responding. "Of course," he said finally, "the Constitution is the supreme law of the land." "Right," Arnold nodded. "So can you explain to me how fining me for wearing a cross, a clear expression of my religious belief, doesn't violate my First Amendment rights?" The room shifted uncomfortably. People were whispering, exchanging nervous glances. Arnold was turning the tables completely, and the judge wasn't prepared for this level of constitutional challenge. The judge, visibly rattled by Arnold's question, straightened his posture. "Mr. Schwarzenegger, you are in a courtroom, not a public space. There are rules here to ensure order and neutrality." Arnold's smile didn't waver. "Neutrality? By punishing me for expressing my religion, you are doing the opposite. You are discriminating against me for practicing my faith." The judge opened his mouth to respond, but Arnold wasn't finished. "I'm sure you know the First Amendment, right? Freedom of religion. The Constitution guarantees that no law shall prohibit the free exercise of religion." The judge looked visibly uncomfortable. Arnold was not the average defendant, and everyone could see that he had completely taken control of the argument. His calm, authoritative demeanor contrasted sharply with the judge's growing frustration. "You're twisting the argument," the judge said, trying to regain control. "This isn't about your freedom of religion, it's about the courtroom's neutrality." "But isn't enforcing neutrality by banning religious symbols itself an infringement on religious freedom?" Arnold pressed. "By telling me I cannot wear my cross, you're not being neutral, you're actively suppressing my rights." The judge fell silent, clearly struggling to find a response that wouldn't play directly into Arnold's argument. The courtroom was now completely still, every eye fixed on the battle of wits between the former governor and the judge. This was no longer about the fine, it was about something much more fundamental. The courtroom began to murmur. Everyone knew Arnold was onto something significant. He wasn't just challenging the fine, he was exposing a much deeper constitutional issue. The judge was visibly struggling to maintain his composure. "Your Honor," Arnold continued, his voice steady and commanding, "if you penalize me for wearing this cross, you're setting a precedent that anyone can be punished for their religious beliefs, even in a country founded on freedom of religion." The judge looked around the courtroom, sensing that he was losing control of the situation. "This court is not here to debate the Constitution, Mr. Schwarzenegger." Arnold leaned forward slightly, his eyes locked on the judge. "Then why are you punishing me for exercising my constitutional right?" The tension in the courtroom was almost unbearable. The judge had no immediate answer, and the silence that followed was telling. Everyone could see that Arnold had made his point loud and clear. But Arnold wasn't done yet. He leaned back, crossing his massive arms. "I'll tell you what," he said, his voice low but firm. "I'll pay your fine, but I'm going to challenge it, and I'm going to take this all the way to the top if I have to." The judge, clearly outmatched, said nothing. Arnold had completely flipped the situation. What started as a simple fine for a dress code violation had turned into a full-blown constitutional battle. As Arnold left the courtroom, the whispers followed him. Everyone knew this wasn't over. Arnold wasn't just fighting for himself, he was about to take on the entire system. News of Arnold's courtroom confrontation spread like wildfire. Social media exploded with discussions about religious freedom and whether the former governor had been wrongfully targeted. #Arnold versus the system began trending within hours, with people everywhere weighing in on the debate. Many questioned how a man could be fined for wearing a symbol of his faith. "He's absolutely right," one commentator said on a popular news show. "This is America. If we can't express our faith freely, then what's the point of the First Amendment?" Others disagreed. "The court has its own rules, and Schwarzenegger should have followed them like anyone else. Just because he's famous doesn't mean he's above the law." But the debate had already shifted beyond Arnold personally. It was now about what the fine represented, a potential erosion of religious freedoms in America. The media frenzy intensified. News channels, talk shows, and online forums were consumed with the question, was Arnold Schwarzenegger's fine justified, or was it a violation of his constitutional rights? Arnold himself remained relatively quiet initially, letting the public conversation unfold without interference. However, behind the scenes, Arnold was preparing for his next move. He wasn't one to back down from a challenge, especially not one that threatened fundamental freedoms. His legal team, a group of high-profile attorneys well-versed in constitutional law, was already working on a comprehensive strategy. But what shocked everyone was that Arnold, despite being known for his achievements in bodybuilding, acting, and politics, had an unexpected legal mind. As days passed, it became clear that Arnold was not only a success in multiple fields but also had a deep understanding of constitutional law. Reports began to emerge that Arnold was heavily involved in crafting the legal arguments himself. He wasn't just sitting back and letting his lawyers handle the case, he was actively guiding the strategy. Drawing on his experience as governor of California and his lifelong study of American institutions, the lawsuit was filed in federal court, challenging the constitutionality of the fine. The legal argument was simple but powerful. Arnold's First Amendment rights had been violated. The courtroom's attempt to enforce neutrality had, in fact, suppressed his religious freedom. By fining him for wearing a cross, the court had essentially punished him for his beliefs. The lawsuit immediately caught the attention of legal experts across the country. Constitutional scholars weighed in, with many agreeing that Arnold had a strong case. Others, however, were skeptical. "The courtroom has rules for a reason," one legal analyst said. "If Schwarzenegger wins this case, it could open the door for all kinds of disruptions in courtrooms nationwide." But Arnold's confidence never wavered. He knew that this wasn't just about him, it was about setting a precedent. He wanted to prove that no one, not even the courts, had the right to infringe on someone's religious freedom. As the court date approached, Arnold's legal team filed their briefs, outlining their argument in meticulous detail. The legal document, masterfully written and filled with references to past Supreme Court cases, was a work of legal brilliance. But what surprised everyone was that Arnold had written significant portions of it himself. It became clear that his legal prowess went far beyond what anyone had expected. On the day of the hearing, the courtroom was packed. Reporters, legal experts, and curious onlookers filled every seat, eager to witness the battle between Arnold and the legal system. The atmosphere was electric, and the tension was palpable. When Arnold entered the courtroom, all eyes were on him, dressed in a sharp navy suit with the same gold cross still hanging around his neck. He looked calm, confident, and ready for battle. This time, he wasn't there as the defendant, he was there as the plaintiff, ready to take on the system that had tried to silence him. The judge, different from the one who had imposed the fine, entered the room. The case had been elevated to federal court, and this judge seemed more prepared for the complex constitutional questions at hand. Arnold's lead attorney began with a powerful opening statement. "Your Honor, this case is about more than a simple fine. It's about the fundamental right to religious freedom. By fining Mr. Schwarzenegger for wearing a cross, The lower court violated his First Amendment rights. We're here to ensure that no one, not even the courts, can infringe upon those rights. The judge listened intently, but it was clear that the real moment everyone was waiting for was Arnold's testimony. When Arnold took the stand, the